News item from the Westover Weekly Enterprise, August 19th, 1966. Rain of stones reported. It was reliably reported by several persons that a rain of stones fell from a clear blue sky on Carlin Street, in the town of Chamberlain, on August the 17th. The stones fell principally on the home of Mrs. Margaret White, damaging the roof extensively and ruining 2 gutters and a downspout valued at approximately $25. Mrs. White, a widow, lives with her 3-year-old daughter, Carrie. Mrs. White could not be reached for comment. Welcome back again to Archer's World of Literature. Today we are doing our first video on the spooky season. So we're kicking off our Halloween reads with the wondrous Stephen King, Carrie. So, a lot of you probably already have heard of this story. This is Stephen King's first published book. And this is going to kickstart my personal journey into the multiverse of Stephen King, which is his sort of interconnected world, sort of similar to, I don't want to compare it to the Marvel universe, but similar to that, where it's sort of little references kind of keep getting dropped, and, you know, it sort of all leads to the Dark Tower, which is his fantasy series. So I actually read this when I was about 12 or 13 years old. Now, I've just decided to reread it as I want to start all of Stephen King's work in publication order, as I haven't read any of his books apart from Carrie. I've started it, but not, this is the only one I've fully read before. But I wanted to start it again just to kickstart the publication order correctly. And on this reread, I'm pretty shocked that my mother allowed me to read this. I'm pretty sure she knew what kind of content was in here. It's quite adult. But nonetheless, Carrie is an incredible book. So Carrie follows the character Carrie White, or Carrie. She is a high school girl who has been relentlessly bullied her whole schooling and educational journey. Now, odd things have happened in the White household ever since Carrie was born. Her mother is extremely religious, to the point where Carrie's kind of been controlled by her mother, and her religious views sort of allow her to do nothing that a normal high school student should be doing. She's not really allowed to socialize. She has to, pray so many hours a day, and she's sort of like locked in a closet and all these things. Pretty traumatic parental abuse scenes in here, which can be quite hard to read. But that's kind of the background on her. And like I said, she's been bullied her whole high school life. And it gets to the point where the opening few chapters, or it's not really divided into chapters, it's kind of done in different news articles and media reports and stuff like that. But in the first kind of few segments of this book, I'll say segments, I'll go with that. The first few segments of this book, Carrie is in the bathroom, the showers, after her phys ed class at school, in the girls' locker room, and she starts bleeding down the thigh while she's having the shower, and the showers are open showers, so all the high school girls can see her. And because her mother's been so shut off from the world and has shut Carrie off from the world, she actually believes that menstruation is like the devil, right? That sex and periods and menstruation and all these things are the devil, God's way of saying that, you're evil, right? It's wild stuff, but that's, what her mother believes. And so Carrie was never raised or taught about that as a girl. And so when she starts bleeding and everyone starts pointing it out to her, she screams, she freaks out, because she doesn't know what it is. She actually screams to her teacher. She thinks she's bleeding to death. She doesn't know what's going on. And basically, she gets bullied. They start throwing tampons and pads and all these things at her. She has to go home for the day. She sort of gets abused by her mum for going home. They got to pray a bunch. Crazy stuff. Next up, it ends up basically the whole story is Carrie gets asked out to prom by one of the most popular boys in school, because this boy is the boyfriend of one of the girls that was involved in the bullying of Carrie, and this girl felt bad for what happened. She regretted it, and so she asked her boyfriend to ask Carrie to the date, because no one's going to ask her to prom because she gets bullied a lot. So he takes her, and basically slowly through the book we start getting more and more glimpses of Carrie's abilities. And basically Carrie is telekinetic. So ever since she was a child, about 3 years old, they had the first sort of reporting of her telekinetic abilities. And her mother thinks it's, the spawn of the devil, as you would imagine she would be. And so sort of teaches Carrie that's all the devil stuff. So she kind of represses it. It doesn't really happen again. It sort of happens when she gets angry or really, really sort of loathes something. And basically after they're getting bullied and then going home and getting abused by her mother for getting sent home from school, she starts to kind of, from then on, she sort of starts to realize that since she's had her first menstruation, it's kind of it's kind of accelerated her powers. Then now she's sort of slowly becoming more aware of it, and she basically gets taken to the prom. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without spoiling it. She gets taken to the prom, and the whole time she's sort of kind of questioning whether this is another trick from the bullies. She's getting, she's being tricked, like, why would the most popular boy in school ask me, this girl gets bullied all the time, out to the prom. And basically, some pretty crazy events happen at the end. I'm not going to spoil it. I think it's pretty obvious that it is a trick. Not necessarily from the boyfriends, from some of the other people who bullied her actually weren't allowed to go to the prom as their punishment, these popular girls, and as a result of that, they plot and plan something awful to happen to Carrie, and essentially she just goes nuts. So that's all I'm going to say. Carrie just kind of goes a little wild after she sort of experiences this horrific thing from the girls that bullied her. Now, like I said before, Carrie is a really, really cool book because I really enjoy books that sort of cut in newspaper articles and scientific reports and journal entries and diaries and poetry and all this. I love books like that. And this is one of the, apart from Dracula by Bram Stoker, I think this is one of the earliest ones that I've read that does it, because, Bram Stoker's Dracula is from the 1800s, but, this one is from, first published in Great Britain, 1974 by New English Library, a division of Hodder and Stoughton. So it's one of the earliest ones that I can recall that does that kind of format, and I love it. I really love books that kind of toy with and sort of manipulate the idea of what a book actually can be and what a book actually is. And, books like House of Leaves or Dracula or Carrie are all just super fascinating. It's the perfect time with the way that modern publishing and print is, and the computer softwares we have. Is the perfect time to sort of experiment with those things while still sort of keeping a traditional structure. I really enjoy reading those kind of things. So yeah, this is what that kind of book, the format of this book kind of is, Carrie. And it sort of jumps from the perspective of Carrie White herself, and then it jumps sort of in the future. Little news articles from after the big events happening in between the book leading up to the big event. And they're from something called the White Commission, the White Commission essentially was a government, like a government-initiated act that was kind of called to investigate the events that happened after the fateful prom night, right, where she sort of, like I said, has that horrible thing happen to her. So it jumps from these articles from the Carrie, the White Commission, and then it jumps to these scientific reports on what telekinesis is and the history of telekinesis, all within this world of Carrie. It jumps to news reports and police calls and fire department radios, and then in the actual dialogue itself, dialogue/monologue, it mainly jumps from Carrie to Sue Snell. So Sue Snell is the girl that felt the regret from bullying Carrie, and it sort of jumps to how she sort of gets her boyfriend to ask Carrie out. It also jumps sort of back and forth from Billy and Chris Hargensen. So Chris Hargensen is one of the girls that wasn't allowed to go to the prom after relentlessly bullying Carrie. And she gets called to the principal's office, and she's got something like 150 detentions for bullying or something crazy like that. Now, what makes this book good? Stephen King's prose is incredible. His ability to actually make you think the same, the way he writes is the exact thoughts of high school kids. The way, I don't know, and I've seen this, I haven't read any of his other books in full, but I have seen it in his works. The way that he can just jump to 1970s, 80s nostalgia and talk about high school life. Like, it's almost like he's reflecting his own life and just how he's able to remember, like, how they spoke, how, girls and guys would be, like, bullies to each other, and how locker room fights would happen and stuff. It's amazing because, like, it is kind of nostalgic to read about those things, but it's also awful because you can't remember the bad things about high school. Like, when I was there, obviously there was bad stuff going on, and I'm sure you guys remember those kind of things as well. Not much of the good in this. There was a lot of good in high school, but this doesn't really go over any of that. So his prose, the way the discussions run and the dialogues and the inner monologues are amazing, and the way that he changes his style and form up to sort of fit the different narratives that he inserts. Like, this one's from the book The Shadow Exploded, page 129. And so The Shadow Exploded is one of the books about telekinesis and sort of talks about the Carrie incident, if you will. And the way that he just starts, like, talking really scientifically and really knowledgeable about telekinesis, and then he jumps straight back to the dialogue, and it's back to Carrie and her high school, the bullies, and her mum, and all these things. He's just a master with words, and you can just fly through this. Like, it's so hard to put down. Now, my only problem with this book, so the cons, my only problem with this book is it's too short. Now, I've said this on my Instagram review for this book, and my Goodreads as well. I understand this is his first published book, so I understand, he's just trying to get his name out there, and possibly maybe he didn't have the confidence to write a larger novel, or maybe even the publishers told him to cut it down. I'm not entirely sure, but a lot of the time publishers with people who write really, really big books, they'll actually say cut it down. Like, we want to publish it, but it's too big. Like, no one's going to read that much or whatever, until they realized how good of a writer King was, and he started publishing books like It and The Shining and Salem's Lot, The Green Mile, all those, which are the tomes. They're huge, right? Sorry, my cat's just trying to make another cameo. If you watched my last video, you'll come to realize that my cat likes to make cameos. Okay, I'm just going to ignore it until the books start flying out. So yeah, the reason that I say that it's too short is a problem is because the characters are so well written, and I can feel there's a lot of history that's sort of given to us about these characters in just a short amount of time. And like I said, the prose, the way they talk, the dialogue, the interrelations between bully and victim, mother and daughter, principal and lawyer. There's a scene where he's talking to a lawyer. The way that those power dynamics go within each character is amazing. He's amazing. But I feel like with the history that we're given of these characters, and what makes it good is that there is a bit of depth. And whilst this is, we do get quite a bit of depth, 200 pages, 250 pages, I feel like we could have gotten a lot more from these characters. I feel like these characters would have been, they were amazing, and the way they talked was amazing, but I do feel like they could have been incredible. They could have been phenomenal. This book could have been phenomenal if it was a little bit longer. Now, in saying that, I do have to keep in mind that this was his first published novel. Like I said, maybe he didn't get the go-ahead for a longer book. And just to get his name out there, this book did a lot. In 250 pages, this book did quite a lot. And even though this is his first book, I would recommend that this is probably a really, really good place to start for Stephen King. It gives you a really good feel for the way he writes and his writing style, how easy it is to read, how much, if it's easy for you to read or not. Like, you might click with it, you might not. For me, I really click with his writing style. And so to continue for spooky season of Halloween, I'm actually going to be going on to his next published book in a couple of books' time, and that's going to be Salem's Lot, which is his second published book. So I'm super. That's a really long one, but I'm super excited to get into that because the way he writes just flies by. It flows so well. So I did give this one a 4 out of 5. I don't really love putting a number to books, but that's kind of just how I keep track of things on my Goodreads account. So I did give this a 4 out of 5. Would have been a 5 out of 5 if the characters were expanded a little bit more. Like you can see, it's a little bit, like, it is short, but absolutely brilliant. I would recommend this to everyone. If you've had a little bit of parental abuse, like physically, perhaps maybe I would recommend not to read that one as a bit of a trigger. Or severe bullying, if that's like a real trigger for you. If not, pick this one up, especially during this month, especially during October. Join me for spooky season. Read this. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you have read it, you know what to do. Put down your thoughts down the bottom. I'd love to talk to you guys about this. So I'm super excited to have been able to do this review for everyone. It's just been a fantastic journey, and Stephen King is a genius. I only read this one, I've read this twice now, and I've read a little bit of it, and I've read some interviews and stuff, and just the amount of content he's got, the guy's a genius. So thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me. I know I say it every time, but you have no idea how much just, a like and a subscribe, whatever, even a comment, even if you don't have the time to do that, a comment just makes me feel so good. I love chatting to people about books. So as always, stay reading. Peace out.